Operating agreement, the commandments of the wealth engine. When an irrevocable trust serves as the legal owner of a wealth engine like such, the operating agreement is no longer merely a standard business document. It transforms into the primary governance instrument designed to preserve, defend, and perpetuate a sovereign financial engine. In this specialized arrangement, the operating agreement functions as the tactical extension of the trust's broader strategic vision, bridging the gap between the trust's permanent, immutable nature and the operational requirements of a dynamic business entity. It serves as the bridge that allows a static, protective trust structure to engage with the open market without exposing the underlying capital accumulation engine to the risks associated with external liabilities, mismanagement, or judicial intervention. By formalizing these protections, the operating agreement ensures that the business entity does not simply exist as a separate vessel, but instead operates as a tightly integrated component of a broader, generational wealth compounding architecture. Imagine, centuries from now, your descendants living entirely off the dividends generated by a foundation you built today. Picture an unbroken, multi-generational legacy of contributions where the total yield has grown to truly astronomical levels. To protect this, you need an ironclad operating agreement, a constitution for your capital. By codifying these rules, you can ensure that the principal remains untouched in perpetuity, strictly restricting access to the dividends alone, making the wealth last for generations upon generations. The operating agreement acts as the authoritative rulebook that codifies the operational behavior of the business entity, ensuring that its daily activities strictly mirror the rigid requirements and long-term mandates of the parent trust. This governance structure is meticulously designed to prevent administrative drift and ensure unwavering adherence to the established financial mission. In a legal and business context, an operating agreement is typically defined as a contract among the members of a company that governs the entity's business operations, member rights, and management procedures. It accomplishes its structural boundaries through three primary governance layers. The first layer is the formalization of administrative cadence and programmatic execution. The agreement establishes highly specific, step-by-step procedures for all internal decision-making processes, which removes the subjectivity of human management. It dictates the administrative cadence, the rhythm of financial activity, by mandating adherence to established contribution frameworks, such as regular, bi-weekly manual capital deployments into core asset positions. By codifying these actions within the operating agreement, the entity ensures that business activities are not merely optional, but are legally required to align with the parent trust's internal contribution cadence. Furthermore, this section of the agreement serves to lock in the sequence of capital accumulation, ensuring that even under varying market conditions, the entity maintains its programmatic trajectory by following predefined, sequence-bound ledgers that dictate share acquisition and reinvestment. This programmatic execution transforms the wealth engine from a standard account into a predictable wealth printing machine, where the operating agreement acts as the software code that the entity must execute to reach its terminal compounding milestones. The second layer of governance is the delineation of ministerial authority versus discretionary limits. The agreement provides a robust legal framework that clearly separates routine, ministerial tasks from structural decision-making. It grants managers and trustees the unilateral, independent authority to execute standard, non-discretionary financial transactions, such as maintaining automated monthly dividend reinvestment plans, DRIP, interacting with master brokerage firms, and managing regular contribution ledgers, without requiring consensus or external approvals. This ensures the entity remains agile and operational for daily maintenance, while strictly limiting the scope of what is considered managerial power, thereby preventing any unauthorized shifts in strategy. By explicitly categorizing tasks as either ministerial, mandatory routine execution, or discretionary, subjective, strategic choice, the agreement protects the entity from mismanagement by establishing that only ministerial authority is ever in play for day-to-day operations. This rigid structure ensures that human bias or external influence cannot penetrate the day-to-day operations of the capital engine. as the agreement defines the limits of authority to exclude any power that would threaten the entity's long-term preservation. Then the final layer is the establishment of rigid structural boundaries. The agreement is explicitly crafted to prevent scope creep by defining the boundaries of management powers with surgical precision, ensuring that the entity's focus remains singular and undisturbed. It effectively strips any individual member or manager of the authority to exert power beyond their defined ministerial capacity, creating a legal sandbox that prohibits the entity from engaging in unauthorized activities that could expose the trust estate to unnecessary risks. Moreover, the agreement serves as a protective fortification against external attempts to alter the entity's purpose. By limiting the scope of power to only that which serves the compounding engine, the agreement makes it legally impossible to justify actions that deviate from the trust's core mission. By defining these strict parameters, the operating agreement ensures that the entity remains focused on its primary, long-term objectives, such as the programmatic acquisition of high-yield assets, and prevents any deviation from the established wealth generation strategy, effectively shielding the business from the influence of changing market sentiments or individual management preferences. Imagine you have a super cool, magical piggy bank that is programmed to save money and grow it automatically every single day, no matter what. An operating agreement is like the instruction manual for a robotic house that holds that magical piggy bank. It makes sure the robot stays on task and protects the bank from anything bad happening. Here is how that manual works. 1. Keeping the robot on a strict schedule. Imagine if the robot in charge of your money suddenly decided to go play outside instead of saving. That would be bad. The manual gives the robot a schedule called administrative cadence. It tells the robot, every 2 weeks, take this exact amount of money and put it in the piggy bank. Because it's written in the manual, the robot has to do it, and it can't skip a day or get distracted. It turns the whole process into a machine that just works on its own, like a video game that plays itself to win. 2. Knowing the rules of the game. The manual also explains what the robot is allowed to do and what it is not allowed to do. This is the ministerial versus discretionary part. The must-do tasks, ministerial. These are simple, important jobs like pressing the save button or checking the piggy bank's balance. The robot is allowed to do these automatically all the time because they keep things running smoothly. The no-go zone, discretionary. The robot is not allowed to make big, fancy choices on its own, like deciding to buy a toy instead of saving the money. By keeping the robot out of the no-go zone, the manual makes sure the piggy bank stays safe from any silly mistakes. 3. Staying inside the fortress, structural boundaries. Finally, the manual acts like a high-tech fence around the robot's house. It creates a legal sandbox. This means the robot is only allowed to stay inside the fence and play with the piggy bank. If someone from the outside tries to trick the robot into leaving the fence or changing the rules to do something else, the manual basically says, nope, that's not allowed. This makes sure the robot stays focused on its one very important job, keeping the piggy bank safe and helping it grow forever. For an irrevocable trust to function as a sovereign fortress, the operating agreement must be precision engineered to act as a barrier against all forms of external, legal, and operational liability. That is done by the insulation from operational liability. By housing infrastructure within a trust-owned wealth engine, the operating agreement creates a distinct legal boundary, shielding the underlying asset volume from outside operational litigation, business debts, and external court interference. It serves as a sophisticated wall that contains risks within the wealth engine's entity, ensuring that any liability incurred by the beneficiary's operations, whether arising from contract, tort, or external regulatory challenges, remains confined strictly within that beneficiary's own assets. This structure effectively isolates the core sovereign assets of the trust from the daily turbulence of the world of the beneficiaries, meaning that even if any of the beneficiaries face a catastrophic financial or legal event, the master capital engine and the generational wealth held within the trust remain untouched. The agreement also explicitly documents the limited liability nature of the entity, providing a clear written defense for the trustees and beneficiaries against personal liability for the debts or obligations of the trust subsidiaries. By establishing this clear separation in the governing document, it creates a robust shield that discourages potential litigants from attempting to pierce the veil, as the operating agreement clearly delineates the formal, sovereign nature of the relationship between the trust and its business arms. One way to create a distinct legal boundary is through the prevention of any title mergers. A sophisticated operating agreement is carefully drafted to ensure that legal title, held by the trust, and beneficial enjoyment, held by the trust beneficiaries, remain strictly separated and distinct. And this distinction is critical for the doctrine of merger, which, if invoked by a court, could collapse the trust structure and destroy its asset protection immunity by merging the legal and equitable interests. By mandating a collective management structure where beneficiaries serve as co-managers rather than sole controllers, the agreement ensures that no single individual ever possesses both the full legal and equitable control over the trust property. This structural design maintains the sovereign fortress status by ensuring the interests of the entire lineage are represented, preventing the accidental merging of titles that would otherwise allow creditors to argue that the trust is merely a sham or an extension of an individual's personal assets. Furthermore, this layer of the agreement acts as a permanent prophylactic against legal challenges that seek to argue that the management and the beneficiaries are one and the same, thereby keeping the asset protection shield fully intact and operational across all successive generations. Here is how the prevention of title merger rule protects your piggy bank structure. If one person is the trustee, the manager, and the sole beneficiary, a court could look at your wealth printing engine and argue that because you hold all the roles, you effectively hold the full title to everything inside the piggy bank. If that happens, the bank is no longer protected. It is just considered yours. By keeping the title separate, you ensure that the bank remains its own sovereign entity, rather than just an extension of the person holding the key. When you have a structure where multiple beneficiaries are involved, or where there is a clear distinction between the managerial role and the beneficial role, you are building a legal wall. The law gets very confused and hesitant when it tries to seize assets that have shared or distinct interests. By making sure that the legal control of the piggy bank, the legal title, is held by the trust/manager, and the benefit of the bank, the equitable title, is held by the beneficiaries, you stop the bank from being seen as one big, seizable blob. In essence, by enforcing the prevention of title merger, you are making sure your engine stays a sovereign fortress. It treats your engine not as your money, but as an independent, self-sustaining machine that happens to exist for the benefit of your family. Enforcement of immutable objectives. The operating agreement functions as the legal vessel that hard-codes the trust's primary mission, specifically the programmatic accumulation of high-yield assets, directly into the corporate fabric of the business entity. By incorporating explicit purpose clauses, the agreement ensures that every dollar generated by the wealth engine is legally and operationally bound to the specific compounding milestones established by the parent trust, leaving no room for alternative financial agendas. It legally constrains the management tier to pursue only the documented wealth generation strategy, effectively prohibiting any unilateral deviation towards speculative, unapproved, or high-risk investments that could threaten the trust's established sovereign compounding velocity. This enforcement mechanism is bolstered by the integration of performance-linked clauses, which necessitate that all distributions are handled through standardized, automated channels like DRIP, ensuring that growth is systemic and consistent rather than reactive. By binding the wealth engine to these specific milestones, the agreement prevents the degradation of capital, as the management is contractually obligated to favor the long-term integrity of the master share engine over any immediate or short-sighted financial desires that may emerge during the lifespan of the entity. Think of the enforcement of immutable objectives as a golden rule for your money-saving robot. Imagine you have a piggy bank, and you write a note inside that says, "This money is only for buying a library of books for my future kids." Because you put that note in the permanent instruction manual for your money, it means that even if you have a bad day and want to spend that money on a giant pile of candy, you can't. The note makes that rule immutable, which is a big fancy word that just means it can never, ever be changed. Here is how that works for your robotic money machine. No oopsies allowed. Since the robot is hard-coded to follow the library book rule, it doesn't matter if the robot gets confused, gets bored, or someone tries to trick it into buying something else. The instructions are locked in, and the robot is legally bound to follow them every single time. The robot doesn't make bad choices. Sometimes humans make choices that aren't very smart when they are tired or feeling impulsive. Because the robot doesn't have feelings and just follows the manual, it won't make those mistakes. It keeps doing the exact same, super smart thing over and over, no matter how long it takes. The library rule stays the library rule. Even if 50 years go by, the rule you wrote in the manual is still there. It keeps the money machine focused on the exact same goal you started with, which makes sure that when your future kids are ready for those books, the money is definitely going to be there, safe and sound. Basically, it's a way of saying, I have a great plan, and I'm going to make sure this plan is so strong that no one, not even me in the future, can break it or change it. To ensure the wealth generation engine continues to function across multiple generations without interruption, the operating agreement must include advanced provisions that account for future leadership transitions. The agreement explicitly dictates the exact mechanical transition of business interests upon designated succession events, ensuring that the shift in leadership is a pre-programmed administrative action rather than an occasion for deliberation or delay. It guarantees that all beneficiaries within an active tier automatically and concurrently ascend to administrative roles as co-primary managing trustees and co-member managers, thereby ensuring that no single individual can seize unilateral control or cause a management void. By eliminating the potential for leadership gaps, the agreement ensures that the underlying financial engine, the master share engine, continues to operate without a single moment of pause, maintaining its compounding velocity regardless of who occupies the management position. These frameworks are designed to be self-executing, meaning the transition happens by operation of the document itself, which prevents external probate courts from needing to appoint managers or interfere with the business operations. Furthermore, this collective management structure ensures that the interests of the entire lineage are protected, as the requirement for concurrent ascension means that administrative authority is shared equally among all eligible heirs, fostering a legacy of collaborative stewardship rather than individualistic control. The absolute structural lock. This provision acts as a permanent, legally binding seal over the fundamental architecture of the entity, preventing any future generation from dismantling the financial engine that supports the lineage. It explicitly strips all current and future trustees, members, and managers of the legal authority to vote on, amend, or terminate the essential compounding strategies or asset protection frameworks established within the operating agreement. By creating this lock, the agreement effectively removes the possibility of generational dilution or management drift, where subsequent managers might otherwise be tempted to liquidate assets or change the investment focus to suit personal needs rather than the long-term compounding mandate. The lock is designed to be so rigid that even a unanimous vote by all active beneficiaries to alter the entity's mission would be considered legally powerless, as the operating agreement mandates that such decisions fall outside the scope of permissible administrative authority. This structural permanence ensures that the trust mission, the programmatic acquisition of high-yield assets, remains a fixed, unshakable directive that guides the entity's actions regardless of the individuals currently holding the management title. Ultimately, the absolute structural lock ensures that the master share engine is not merely a transient business project, but a permanent, self-perpetuating, sovereign entity that operates according to its original, hard-coded intent across all time. Ultra vires prohibitions. Any action undertaken by a manager or member that attempts to circumvent the foundational architecture of the entity is legally classified as ultra vires, meaning beyond the powers, and is rendered null and void from the moment of its inception. This prohibition creates a non-negotiable legal perimeter. Any decision involving the modification of trust-bound mandates, asset protection protocols, or succession hierarchies is strictly denied legal recognition, effectively depowering any actor who attempts to overstep their administrative boundaries. The agreement explicitly mandates that such unauthorized attempts trigger the immediate, automatic suspension of all management and administrative privileges for the initiating parties, serving as an instant circuit breaker to neutralize potential internal threats to the entity's sovereign status. By labeling these actions as ultra vires, the agreement provides third-party stakeholders, such as brokerages and financial institutions, with clear written instructions to reject any requests that do not comply with the established immutable operational mandate. This creates an ironclad protection system where the entity is essentially immune to internal coups. If a manager tries to move assets out of the defined compounding engine or alter the spendthrift provisions, the operating agreement itself becomes the evidence that proves the action was unauthorized, legally indefensible, and automatically void. Ultimately, the ultra vires prohibition functions as the final, most aggressive defense mechanism, ensuring that the sovereign fortress cannot be breached or repurposed from the inside, thereby safeguarding the compounding engine against any future human attempt to compromise its integrity. The primary layer of protection for this structure is the irrevocable trust entity itself. The operating agreement serves as the secondary layer of protection, reinforcing the spendthrift nature of the trust to ensure the entity's interest remains entirely inaccessible to external claimants. By incorporating rigorous language that prohibits any beneficiary from pledging, assigning, or transferring their interest, the agreement ensures that the asset base remains undivided and protected from involuntary transfers via bankruptcy, insolvency, divorce, or operation of law. The agreement safeguards not only the existing principal assets, but also all future income streams, ensuring that all distributions remain within the intended sovereign structure for the exclusive benefit of future generations. By integrating these protections into the operating agreement, the entity functions as a self-driving independent corporate engine capable of executing its programmatic wealth compounding milestones indefinitely. This robust framework ensures that the fundamental mission of capital preservation remains secure, unshakable, and completely shielded from any form of external interference or internal dissolution. When you eventually transition into the next stage of your life, it is with the firm belief that the wealth-generating engine you established remains fully intact and continues to compound for future generations, ensuring prosperity for all descendants without exception. The trust serves as the secure vault, housing the assets that yield the income upon which your beneficiaries rely. The operating agreement provides the essential peace of mind that the principal capital is permanently protected, effectively neutralizing the risk of it being depleted or squandered by any descendant. By maintaining this governance framework, you create a robust, immutable barrier that shields your family's interests from external threats, including litigants, creditors, ex-spouses, and other third parties, thereby preventing them from successfully using the court system or litigation to seize family assets. As you look toward the future, you can take comfort in the knowledge that the financial engine you have set in motion is designed to remain an immovable, compounding force for your descendants, ensuring that each generation thrives without ever experiencing lack. The trust acts as a sovereign vault, preserving the principle that provides for their needs, while the operating agreement serves as the unshakable guardian of that capital. With this structure in place, the principle is shielded from being squandered or depleted, and the entire architecture stands as a fortress against external threats, be they creditors, litigants, or legal challenges, ensuring your family's legacy remains entirely secure. This is more than just wealth management. It is the construction of a permanent, self-sustaining mechanism that will protect and provide for your lineage across the decades to come. If you found this breakdown of the Wealth Engine's protective architecture valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We will be continuing this series to explain every technical component required to build and maintain this engine, so make sure to stay tuned for the next deep dive into the mechanics of your sovereign financial fortress. Let's keep building!